The little second rifle you're talking about, that's our SWAT rifles.
Meeting come to order of the flight salute. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Jamie, would you do a roll call, please?
Yes. Councilor Wayne Reese here.
Here.
Councilor Jason Boland.
Here.
Councilor Floyd Fisher.
Here.
Councilor Rebecca Grizzle. Here. Councilor Bob Elliott.
Here.
Councilor Barry Scott.
Councilor Scott had contacted me and he is out of town today.
Thank you. Mayor Paul Aziz.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, we have the consent calendar. Does everybody get a chance to look over the minutes and the agenda? Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes and the agenda? Seeing none, the consent calendar is approved. Citizens' comments. Citizens may address the council approaching the microphone, signing in and stating their name and address for the record. Each citizen is provided up to 5 minutes to provide comments to the council. The council will accept and distribute written comments at the speaker's request. The council welcomes all respectful citizens' comments regarding the city's business. Please refrain from making personal attacks. Speakers may offer objective criticism of city operations and programs, but this council does not hear complaints concerning city personnel. You should direct all complaints involving city employees to the Lebanon city manager. Are there any public comments?
Paul, did you approve
I did.
it? You did.
Yes. Yeah. I believe procedure, we just need to approve the consent calendar that we did.
Okay.
Okay, moving on, regular session, city manager recruitment, RFP update. John Hitt, city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. You have a binder titled on the outside, City Manager Recruitment 2013. And I'll get into that in a little bit more detail in just a second. Now, you also have at your seats there, this is just some materials or draft materials we've used in the past. Candidate itinerary for Lebanon City Manager, just an example of when we do a community hosting event. So kind of what that looks like and what we've done in the past, I'll put it that way. You also have at your seat there a letter, proposed letter, to be signed by the various members of the City Council. That would be either made part of the application packet or otherwise be available to prospective applicants. And then finally, you have our standard city application packet. Now, if in many cases, I think what would happen here, some of these materials would be used. Some of these materials would be used by the recruiting firm, and I guess some would not. Obviously, they would probably use a copy of the job description, and probably our application form, unless for some reason they would prefer us to use their own application form. But typically, they use the city's application form release for provide information and so on. So again, just kind of FYI, these materials, just to give you a little bit better background and example or samples of what we've done in the past. In your 3-ring binder are proposals from several firms. As I indicated in my cover memo, I contacted every firm that I was aware of that was active. I'm sure there's some other firms out there that aren't particularly active, but I picked out every active city manager, city municipal recruitment firm that I was aware of, contacted them by telephone, basically gave them an oral RFP, and you can can see in my memo there dated March 6th, I asked each one offer a recommended recruitment process, anticipated timeline, recent city manager recruitments, especially in the Northwest, overall firm and individual qualifications for doing recruitment work, anticipated fee and cost, including advertising, printing, etc., and proposed methods of marketing or outreach for the city manager recruitment. Those that I contacted, everyone responded. You have those responses in your 3-ring binder. You can see they're listed 1 through 6. I don't have a lot of comment about those. Just a few points. I frankly believe that probably any of them would do a good job. All of these are well-known, respected firms that have been around for a long time. So I don't question that or think that anyone would do an inadequate or poor job. The ones that, in my experience, have been the most active in Oregon are number 2, Colin, I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce the last name, but Bainsinger and Associates, and also then number 4, Proffman. Those are the ones in recent years that have been the most active in the Northwest, at least in my experience. The ones that I see the most ads from, that I've been personally contacted the most by. And I didn't go through and look at far as how those 2 firms compared as far as actual placements, particularly city manager replacements in comparison to their the other 4 firms. I'm just at this point relying on my own personal experience. But again, I think they're all good firms. Some of them, it's an all-inclusive fee proposal, i.e. the fee proposal that includes all expenses. Or typically, you'll see there, as far as fee, that they have a fee for their professional services, and then an estimate, sometimes a guarantee, in some cases, that the expenses will not exceed a certain amount. They're all pretty much in the range of $18,000, $19,000 to $30,000, which is kind of what we talked about before. So they're, and that, I think in all cases, maybe one exception, but I think in all cases that was inclusive of at least estimated fees. So again, I don't know how much you want to make price a consideration or cost a consideration. And I didn't go through and pull out and work on, okay, this firm has the lowest fee and this one has the lowest expenses or anticipated expenses are the least, or this firm guarantees the expenses will exceed a certain amount. But I can certainly do that if that's your preference. Again, as I indicated in my memo, I wasn't sure what you wanted to do as the next step, whether you wanted to kind of boil it down to 2 or 3 favorites, whether you felt ready to at least tentatively move forward at this point with a particular firm, or whether you wanted to either ask staff to acquire more information and or schedule possible interviews. I don't know how many of them would be available to come down and do a personal interview versus like a telephone conference type interview. And again, if we're going to ask them to do personal interviews, and that's certainly a good idea, if we're going to ask them to do that, probably finding a date, obviously, particularly if it's 3 firms or 4 firms, it's a little bit more difficult. It may tend to push things out. Most of the timelines were 60 to 90 days. There was one at least that I recall was 120 days. I think 60 to 90 is aggressive, even arguably very aggressive, but probably doable if we get going very quickly. So that's my questions. That's my survey, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Would council like to discuss the process, or I would like to go into just talking about different firms. Has everybody had a chance to look at the firms? I know they've been sent out electronically, but I don't know if everybody's had a chance to really look at them.
I didn't have a chance to look really so hard at the last 2, but,
Okay.
but most of them as they came in, I tried to read through them. But
Would we like to just go ahead and talk about firms, maybe pick out our favorites, or talk about what we liked or didn't? Anybody want to start?
I really liked Bozeman and the Ralph Anderson. Just stuck out to me as being 2 of the more concerned with the fit, and that's one of the words we use, and we talked about that previously. So when looking through it, those two just kind of stood out to me for a number of reasons. And just my 2 cents.
Okay.
What, no?
Rofman was my choice, Paul, in terms of
Number 4.
looking at the history they have with Oregon, Washington Northwest. I thought it was the most friendly, I guess, document.
Which one was that, Wayne?
Rofman,
Number 4 on the,
Okay.
I agree, I think all of them certainly are professional firms that could do the job. Just because of the same reasons that Councilor Boland, I think I concur with that. I think it was more professional.
okay. Anything else?
Like their connection with the, Pacific Northwest. That's, being familiar with, excuse me, with our area is helpful to sell our area.
And they were right here, they were in this bar, Olympia, weren't they? Or is that where they were?
They're Seattle.
Seattle.
Yeah, so they're close too, which is
Yeah.
nice.
Right.
It's a lot of that can keep some cost. Then,
Yeah, it's a problem.
Do you have any comments, Blake?
Well, it's kind of amazing undertaking comparing people and also people.
It is.
And I have not gotten as far as to find some mechanism which we now prioritize. That's kind of, yeah, I could get there.
Okay.
But I'm like with John, I think they all would see confidence in me, so I would surrender to an overwhelming leaning.
Okay. And Bob?
I was pretty impressed with the profit on it, and I like the idea that they are situated close by in Washington. The one in Florida, probably a pretty good one, but I wondered because it's so far away.
Yeah.
And I also have a concern about hiring someone, say, from Florida to come here, different climate and everything. How long they're gonna stay? That means a lot. So I would be pretty comfortable with Pro.
And Kaufman was on the top of my list. I had Bob Murray and Associates as the second. But the one thing I like, and I know I'm a little prejudiced this way, but the law enforcement experience that the lead has in that company. Also, I believe there's another person that had law enforcement experience. Plus, the lead, along with law enforcement, has city administrator experience too. So it's really an impressive list of things that we like as far as the type of city manager that we're looking for. And the Northwest thing, that was what I keyed right in on, because it is so different, and they mention that in there about the climate. Because someone coming from Arizona and moving to Oregon, that's a big life change, and how long is that really going to last? Because I know a lot of people that live here, they come here and realize.
I've got a neighbor that came from Arizona to Lebanon, and he just sold his house, and he's going back to Arizona.
Yeah, so
they talked about the weather, the culture.
Yeah.
And also, what I liked about that was they mentioned the fit for the spouses and the children and family.
yeah.
And it was an extra level of care. I thought that was unique to them. So.
And Wayne's comment was right on too. I like the document, and I thought if they prepare a document that was that nice and it was easy for me to understand and really pick stuff out, and then producing probably some pretty good material for us. And their advertising brochures, the couple that they put in there as examples, were pretty nice, nice and clean, good professional. So we might have a little bit of consensus, unless you're opposed to the Kaufman.
Oh, not at all.
Okay.
He said he would do whatever I wanted. You look right at me when you said that.
Well, we all say that.
I know, right?
Well, Rothman has had a lot of experience with the state of Oregon.
Well, and I would say, I mentioned Kaufman and Basinger as being the most active, but of those two in the Northwest, in recent year or two, but of those two, I would say definitely Rothman has been the most active.
We've never used them before.
No, we have not. We've gotten proposals from them before, but we've never actually used them.
Okay.
You know, they have addressed communities' needs in all the areas that, you know, we have interest in terms of replacement, whether it's been past or future. They've covered, you know, police chiefs and library directors, HR people, and county commissioners.
I also like their 2-year guarantee. I thought that was
Yeah.
impressive. They were one of the few that did 2 years as
Yeah.
opposed to 1. And
Yeah.
that was kind of impressive. So if we did get somebody that didn't like the climate or decided to move quickly, we're covered. And I think we just have to pay expenses, I believe. On a new search, I think you just have to pay expenses, but you don't have a huge expense if they redo it.
Big fee is covered.
Okay.
I think they're a, I mean, that's just my number one choice.
They are the only one that did not put a ceiling on expenses that I noticed.
Yes.
But they're pretty reasonable out of the gate too. So.
Yeah.
Right.
Do we want to entertain a motion?
Well, I think also, Mayor, my additional comment would be that those cities that are in Oregon and Washington that have hired them to do their recruitment needs. I would make a motion, Mr. Mayor, that we offer Kaufman as our recruiting firm for the positions Lebanon City Manager.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we hire the Prothman, or have our city manager hire the Prothman.
Sorry, that was what my comment was going to be, is if the motion could just be a friendly amendment authorizing the city manager to enter into negotiations for a contract with Rothman. Because it's actually the city manager that will be entering into the contract on behalf of the city.
Okay, I would amend it, read that way.
Okay. And it's been moved and seconded that we allow the city manager to enter the contract with the Prothman Group. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay. Was there anything else on that you?
No, sir.
And any items from council you'd like to discuss?
There is, on the letter,
Yes, yes.
I'd like to see something in here that, by the way, it's a nice letter.
Thank you.
Something to the effect that we're a financially sound city, that, we're entering into something that isn't a can of worms. There's a lot of cities are not. I think it would speak well to the kind of planning that we've had to be there. And I don't know, maybe something about the degree of community support that would build a new justice center and library that has been present in the past and still alive and well there.
Good comments.
Yeah, I think maybe the bond issues that the citizens passed to do all those things is a highlight of the community.
I think maybe a little more focus on Comp Northwest
Okay.
and move towards this becoming maybe a medical community.
Highlight that a little more.
Yeah, the
Maybe
nursing
the
program
expansion that's coming.
that's coming.
Announcement of the nursing school.
Okay.
I believe at Patriots Place is unique that
Yeah.
local people dug into the pockets to make that happen.
Yeah, and I mistakenly named it Patriots Place. That's the street that it's on. Bob corrected me. It's the name of the, it was with an A, I can't remember his name, but it was with that soldier's name. So we'll correct that. But no, that's good points. And we'll add the nursing school and the other future hotel convention centers and those other things. they're being planned.
It's a good start.
Thanks.
Yeah,
And that's what I was hoping to
it's
throw it out.
And maybe along with saying the nursing school, just the possibility of Comp Northwest bringing some of their other medical disciplines to the area. They've talked about the other disciplines with building in conjunction with that.
Do we want to mention the automotive advanced technology?
That's probably
Yeah,
it.
let's do
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
We might as well
Yeah.
put up our
Yeah.
flag.
We're gonna toot our horn, let's toot it loudly.
Well, we got a lot going on. I mean, it's a pretty awesome place.
Well, and part of that happening is the willingness for government agencies to work together.
Yeah.
And
Good
that's,
partnership.
yeah, that's not present everywhere.
Okay. Any other additions, comments? Did the tone seem okay, the way it was presented?
Yes.
What I'll do is I'll take your input and put it in and get another draft and send it out to you guys this week. And then I'd like to get that to John probably by the end of next week. Would that be free? Okay.
And are we going to send that to all applicants or all finalists?
What I'll do is I'll provide it to Brothman and have a discussion with whoever's going to be our account rep as to how best to utilize it. I'm sure they'll have their own ideas.
Yeah.
Put in their packet.
Yeah.
Good.
Because it's kind of, their choice on how to do that.
Yeah, and maybe something they want to lead with or something they provide actually to people that, that they make a focus recruitment effort with or whatever. So,
Thank you everybody for your input on that. Was there any other council items? Councilors?
I think maybe one thing, Paul, you have announced that people that are citizens or at the mic are going to be respectful and not abusive. And I know last time when Bill made his comment and you called him on it, but how do you plan to follow through with that once it's already been said and done and over?
It's a kind of thing where we can't stop it, but I would prefer not to encourage that kind of environment, and all I can do is ask them not to. They have freedom of expression, and so that's the point that I've talked to our city attorney about it. It's something we have to allow, but it's something I want to discourage as much as I can. So it's kind of a tightrope that we have to walk.
If it's abusive or harassment, can we not ask them to, we can ask them to leave, I guess, they can continue to say what they want.
Yeah, and it's the point where when it starts becoming attacking, especially someone who's here, it probably should be something that will stop or ask to stop it. Like I said, there's nothing we can do to actually stop it.
Yeah, I mean, if it gets to the point of disturbing the meeting, Ninth Circuit has said, for example, if they go over their 5 minutes, they're asked to leave, they don't leave, if they're clapping from the audience incessantly, things like that that actually interrupt the ability of the council to conduct a meeting. And in those instances, you can ask them to leave. What we have to be careful of is that this is a public forum, and when people come back and we have presented this as a public forum, we can ask them, to be respectful. We can ask them to not personally make personal attacks. We can ask them to do these things that we would like to see as part of our of good government. But at the point that you try to cut off somebody or tell them what they can or control the content, that's when you potentially infringe on somebody's First Amendment rights. So we have to avoid that. At the same time, if there's a city employee that's sitting in the audience or up here or a counselor that they are attacking, we could stop them, pause, and say, listen, you don't have to sit here and listen to this. You can leave if you want to leave, and then let them continue. So there's things we can do without incurring liability on behalf of the city. But what we want them to know is that, to really make any difference, if it is a criticism of a city employee or something like that, that this council is not going to be able to do anything about that anyways, and that their first line should always be to go to the city manager. And you can tell them that, there's a potential for appeals coming to the city council, and so it's not appropriate to hear city employee matters. But other than that, yeah, you pretty much have to sit there and listen to it, and just hope that people have the respect to address this council.
Can I say as a counselor that, myself, I'm not receptive to disrespectful discourse, and I find your approach very disrespectful, and I don't deal with that.
I would suggest that you certainly could. I still would not, and I've said this from the first day I've been the city attorney, is that it's not a good time, I think, to get into an interaction during the public comment section. I think you sit, you listen, and then when there's appropriate time afterwards to either answer questions that were presented or to make comments, that would be the appropriate time. But, you know, and I like I said, I pushed this from the start, is it's really a bad practice as far as in the long term. There's times when it would work fine. You know, they have a simple question, you have a simple answer, why not give it? Problem is that too often, if you're going to continue to do that, you have a back and forth. And it becomes an argument, and they don't hear what you're saying, even though you've answered the question. So why not wait till the end? And that's my only suggestion, is say what you want to say, but maybe do it at the end. But that's up to you.
The alternative is when you just say, look, we're not going to, there's no back and forth, then we're just staring at them and they feel like they've not been heard. I mean, I think that is where some of the more recent bad feelings come from, is that interaction where, yes, I can address the council, but the council doesn't address back. We can't have a conversation, and whether that's it, I'll take that legal risk if it's a legal risk, so that people feel. Let me ask you a couple clarifying questions, and or maybe I just disagree with you. I don't want to argue. I want to keep it respectful, but I think people feel heard if you have a little bit of back and forth discourse instead of saying, okay, next. And I mean, sitting as an audience member, seeing a few of those meetings, I felt that, whoa, wait, we didn't do that before, and it felt so wrong as an audience member.
And that's a city policy, how to run the meetings is up to you guys. And really, it's up to the mayor, but I think we formed a committee that would look at something directly like that as far as policy procedures of the amount of council meetings themselves. And like I say, all I've done is I've looked at what other cities done. I've read some articles about it, and I'm telling you what most councils, what most governments do, and what's recommended. It's up to this council what they want to do.
To respectfully disagree with you.
I've had the
You
same.
can always respectfully disagree with me.
I've had the same feelings sitting in the audience and listening to the stonewalling that is perceived. But I think now that I'm sitting here, I'm going to be more apt to say, to answer in a way that says, I will be glad to stay after the meeting, and I'll be glad to sit and talk to you or discuss it with you further at that time. And at least that way, someone is offering to listen to them and to discuss with them. And hopefully they see that they don't have the ability to have an open forum here for half an hour. But if they want to hang around until 10:30, I'll hang around until 10:30 and we'll talk it over.
It's 5 minutes. I want to be able to ask a couple clarifying questions. I don't want to feel like I can.
You can.
And I want them to feel like we cared that they had something. Not the guy that's coming up and name calling and screaming at everybody. But look, I mean, it may as well look like it's falling on deaf ears because you just lost me. I don't.
I think that's just as much of a right to be heard as
Absolutely,
anyone
but
else.
your approach in approaching council in a respectful way, I have an issue. I'd like to discuss it. I mean, he was not respectful at all.
No.
And I'm gonna, say, look, when you can calm down and we can talk about this in a little more productive way, I'll discuss it with you, but I don't enter into that kind of an elevated, escalated, he was very escalated. And there was gonna be no reasoning. It would have been like when Ray was up here. There was nothing you could say was being absorbed, and you knew that, so I washed my hands of it. So,
The hard part that I have is running the meeting is, if we give everybody 5 minutes and then we start asking questions in that 5 minutes, we're then taking up their time of things that they might want to say in that 5 minutes. And then if we start asking questions after the 5 minutes, we're now giving that person more time than the person before if we didn't ask any questions. So that was one of the reasons why I've kind of agreed with Trey on that, is that we should have 5 minutes where we listen. And one of the things, and we can discuss this if we want to change this, it's it's our council, we want to change it. But I was thinking that after we listened, and listen to each person. Then if each of us takes notes and one of us wants to, talk about one of the things at the end, then that would be a possibility to talk about it. And it's not a back and forth thing, it's just more of a little bit of a comment on it. Like Jason said, maybe we can talk about that later, and we could talk to the finance director after and meet with them, or, would you, chief, meet with them. It's
I
a
like
very,
that,
very
staff
difficult
does that.
balance.
I know there was one meeting where I was sitting there and a number of things about the water and whatnot were coming up, and I watched Dan Brassick get up, and people got up, made their statement, sat down upset because no one answered them, and Dan went over and talked to each of them personally.
Yeah.
Right then and there. And I think,
I've seen Dean do that too.
yeah, to see our staff do that is encouraging, and I hope that is respected by them, by the audience members, but certainly worth mentioning in council comments or following up afterwards. Somebody's gonna wanna talk to them if it's,
Historically, in a lot of cases, it falls on the city managers. A lot of questions are directed to him. And he's always fielded those and answered them at the end of the meeting.
Yeah.
And I know that we've had negative feedback from those present that John's not answering the question after it's been answered. Now, I know sometimes you need some time to maybe
Yeah,
think and
that's
reflect
true
on
too.
that.
Yep.
So, but the perception is that we're thinking they're gonna get up and leave, then you have to go.
Yeah. Well, let me, if I may, make a couple comments. One is, this is a tricky area, no question. It's a tricky area anywhere and everywhere I've been. Every city council I've ever worked with or been associated with, I've kind of wrestled with this issue. But I think it's better, it's a judgment call and it's a tough call, but I think it's better. I think the audience needs to be assured at the beginning of the public comment period that to the extent that we can, we will answer them before the meeting is over. So it's either during the councilor comment period, or it's during the city manager's report, or at some point, somebody will address them as best we can. This is all pretty much spur of the moment. So, so if they know that up front. But keep in mind too, and I think Mayor Paul makes a good point, if we engage in a dialogue with speaker number 3, and there's 6 or 7 people more that want to talk, and maybe on totally different issues than speaker number 3 wants to. So I'm sitting there, and the council's going back and forth with speaker number 3. What do you think about this? Well, how about if we did that? And well, how, and sometimes inadvertently, those discussions can go 10, 15, 20 minutes sometimes. And I'm sitting in the back, and I'm 4, 5, 6 speakers down the list from number 3, and I'm sitting there, well, what about me? You're giving this guy basically, maybe he didn't have more than 5 minutes to speak, but basically he's gotten 15, 20 minutes for his topic or subject of concern, and I still haven't even had a chance to say word number 1.
You would call off the discussion at 5 minutes, or Paul would, to say, and because there becomes a point where it's obvious, where I've spoken for 3 minutes, and it's obvious that I'm done presenting. There's 2 minutes left. If there's a way to address that now, and just have some sort of a discourse to wrap that up, and if it goes on longer, then Paul can say, you know what, the 5 minutes is up. If you don't mind, John, do you mind maybe giving her a call, and maybe you guys can
Yeah, I'm always happy to do that.
or so that you're still allotting just the 5 minutes, and you're still allowing me to finish my presentation. If my presentation's going beyond the 5 minutes, obviously there's no time for discourse. You should have planned that better. That's all we allow. But my statement is obviously going to come to a logical end that would allow a natural discourse. Because if John's going to say something about my presentation at the end of the meeting, I now have to stay for a whole meeting that I maybe didn't want to stay for. But B, he's just going to say something, and I may want to rebut that and say, yeah, but no, you don't understand. It was on this side of the house. Oh, so it doesn't allow for any discourse.
I think one of the things that I don't like is that we all have tools that work better for us, And if we're uncomfortable, it's going to show, and we're gonna feel awkward. I feel awkward with this long pause, and I think it probably shows. And if they are uncomfortable coming to speak, because it is weird to go from the official group, and then you get awkwardness back, how intimidating.
The reception's not good.
Yeah, so, but maybe, you know, I like the idea of the response because it's warmer, it's more welcoming, and if we study, you know, like counseling or something like that it's okay to talk, it's the deeper issues to come out. When you feel awkward, you climb up and you don't go there anymore, and that's what creates intimacy. So if we want to be warm and we want to communicate, there's usually no better time than then. What if we had, and I agree, 5 minutes, give them the 5 minutes. Don't burn it up going off tangents. But what if we had a 2-minute or whatever time for the quick answer, so that they could know that, okay, that'll be addressed by such and such at this point, so they feel immediately responded to because it was important. And if it, well, and maybe in that 2 minutes, that's a big subject, we'd like to get back to you next, you know, give us a week to get information, that kind of thing, but it's an immediate response.
We've got 6 counselors that may want to respond.
Well, then, I think then, you know, like, I would rather have that response X. Collectively, it's going to be a lot of time no matter what we do if we respond, even at the end of all of the comments. It's just, it's harder to remember, you know, connected to what they said. So if we opt to agree to take more than that time, I don't know why we couldn't or shouldn't, but give them their 5 minutes uninterrupted, but just don't move it clear to the end. Do it at the end of their presentation and then open up another presentation.
But I think the mayor needs to have some control over who,
Get a
how
feel.
many are going to respond.
Well, and I think 99%, I don't remember this being an issue when I was on council before. I think 99% of the time, 5 minutes is more than adequate for me to tell you and for me to come to some sort of pause where you ask me a couple questions, and it is a more intimate, and it did seem like we cared. Like we listened to the problem and we cared because we did, you know. That was like, oh, or I disagree on this point, or to have some sort of a more, you know.
I'm uncomfortable with it, so I think they pick up my uncomfort and think it's
And
against
you
them.
do, it is very
And they
awkward
think it's
out
against
there.
them. Yeah.
It is really.
It is, well, I was very uncomfortable too, because it was kind of one of the first times it's happened here. It
What
was
we're
very
doing is
uncomfortable.
making people feel unheard.
Yeah.
John, when you came here, and that's what we did, why did we change?
Well, I don't know that it was a conscious change so much.
Changed after I was on council.
Yeah, it was
wasn't
after,
like that when I was
yeah.
on.
I think, you know, keep in mind too, we had a series of meetings there 9 months ago or so, where we had a lot of people coming that were very, very angry and their initial get-go, boom, they were, you know, if this is the scale of human emotions, they were probably just a little below the top, the top extreme end. And I would say, I'll just speak for myself. It's very difficult to answer somebody because they're already so elevated. My natural response, and maybe this is a completely wrong response, is let's give this a little time to kind of ramp down just a bit before we talk about it. And and not that I was a big advocate necessarily for not responding, but immediately. But keep in mind, we had again several meetings where a lot of people were coming forward. I mean, not just 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. A lot of people were coming forward, and many of those, even arguably most of them, were starting out in a real ramped up tone. So it seemed, at least on my part, and I think on Kent's part, and maybe 1 or 2 others, let's let things calm down a little bit and try to answer later in the meeting. And try to answer, because so many things are often coming to rapid fire. What about this? How about that? And I got this, and I got water bill, and I got blah, 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 barking dogs, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You know, your head's spinning. So the thinking was, on Ken's part and my part, and maybe mistakenly so, that if we allowed a little time for me to digest the answers, or the questions, or to formulate some kind of answers, and give folks a little bit of time to rent out, and make sure everybody had a chance to come forward without having to, again, necessarily get bogged down, because at that time we didn't have the timer, we weren't really clear on, you've got this many minutes and that's it. And so, and I think that's a great thing, and I totally support that, however we parse it. But, so I think that's kind of how we got there to answer your question, Wayne. That may not be a very good answer, but that's the best one that I know.
Well, I know I've been very uncomfortable at times because we didn't respond to someone.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, and I wanted to, and I think that we should, in some way, maybe it's just a matter of figuring out how to do it so that it's fair. Again, I want to be fair to everybody so that we don't give someone a whole bunch of extra time and the other person doesn't. And maybe it's a second set of 5 minutes for the person while we're discussing it.
The problem I have with the instant response is that while in one respect it's more intimate, it shows respect. The problem is there are a couple different varieties of issues that are proposed to us from that chair. One of them, I'll use Wyatt King for example, comes up, he gives his proposal on holistic well-being. Oh, we're all interested in this. Tell us more. We engage with that. The next person up is screaming about, or is very upset and animated about their water bill or administration in the Justice Center or whatever. And we sit back and we say, I don't want to touch that with 10-foot pole right now. So that's why the stonewall comes out. If we eliminate, if everyone wants to jump on board with the feel-good story, nobody wants to address the issue that's going to get their head bit off. If we defer, like John says, to the end of the meeting, where somebody, and if no counselors speak up, then sorry, John, it's in your pocket. John says, I will get with you after the meeting and I will try to answer whatever questions. Or if there's a specific counselor they're addressing and they want to talk to Bob Elliott, well then, Bob Elliott, you're going to hang around for 5 minutes and talk to him and try to talk to him after the meeting. I think that's why it's best to be done later, not during the meeting, even though I'm in favor of answering those simple questions. You can't have your cake and eat it too, I guess is what it comes to.
Well, let me say this though. A lot of the times, the ones that where someone comes in and it's the water bill or something, and they have their feelings and they're entitled to that. But they're also upset about something that has evolved through 8,000 meetings and 20,000 hours of discussion. It's real difficult to say that happened because of blah.
Yes.
I remember when people came angry after the storm charges happened, and they said, why? And I'm thinking, where do we start? How many meetings did we have? How many revisions did we make? How many? And so it's, I don't know that, I personally am not reluctant to answer, just how do you answer that kind of volume in a minute or two?
The one meeting that I sat out there in the audience and watched that was the best meeting I'd ever attended was the one where the city staff was answering questions about the water. It was the one where there were a whole bunch of people in the audience and people were interacting. They were asking questions and everybody got answers back. I think it was Dan Grassick, if I'm not mistaken, gave the spiel on the water and explained why it was. And it was actually a very good explanation. And a lot of people left here like, okay, I understand now. I'm not happy, but I understand. And I thought that was a really well handled meeting. I don't know.
Well, and that was advertised as that kind of meeting.
Yeah.
No, it was.
It was. But I guess that's just my point is that in that situation, that works so well, I just don't know how we can apply that in a regular meeting.
Yeah, and the
For
problem,
time.
and the problem is the person that missed that meeting is gonna still come angry 3 months from now.
3 months
very
from
true.
now, yeah.
And so how do you, I guess what I'm trying to say is
They should watch it on YouTube.
if we can give someone or seek in more information, if Wyatt comes, it's a concept that we need to seek more information on. So we give a little more information. If it's, we've got to give the history of the United States, we'll set an appointment and do that, you know. And I don't think that's wrong, because you tell them that's a complex thing. It has a lot of history. We'd like to honor you with.
For 4 years to
Yeah.
come up with solutions.
We'd like
Where
to
were
honor you
Yeah,
with a
that's
little bit of a recap.
That's kind of what I would assume when they happened there.
Well, see, that's part of the problem of giving the instant answer. Because in the past, sometimes when I've done that, then I think the next day, oh my God, I said X and it really was X minus 10 or whatever, I didn't quite phrase it correctly.
You're gonna say wrong things now and again, or you're gonna say something that is like, good God, I can't believe I said that. You think I don't do that like every meeting? But I can't say it enough. I cannot say enough that I think it has really helped to hone a culture or to develop a culture in town right now where we are untouchable and don't listen, and the last several months has brought about this perception that isn't true. But it's not. This doesn't help our case, and it frustrates me as a counselor, and it frustrated me as an audience member, and I'll let it go because
What about this? Why don't we put it on our goal setting session, because communication is huge. And this could be one of the nuts and bolts ways.
I was thinking as we were talking about this, this is actually goal setting is what we're doing. Yeah. So, let's talk about it then. And it's one of those things that, as Trey mentioned, that we were talking about as far as our council procedures, some of the things that just aren't written, and we do need to get some of those things down too, so. Okay. Any other?
Yeah, timing's good.
Any other quick subjects?
Just I want to say I don't mind answering anybody's questions except for Ryan King, so I'm not gonna, I ain't dealing with that guy.
And also, that I try to follow through on my own advice. I was put on the spot there a couple weeks ago with a question directed at me. And a complete, honest, easy answer was no. But I refused, because if I'm going to make you guys do it, I'm also not going to do it. But I'll also say that it was very easy to find that guy at the first break and say, listen, no, and here's why. So I understand it's hard. It's not comfortable sitting there and letting people ask the questions.
right. And then the rest of the audience left believing that we didn't care about that guy, even though you took that extra step to go. But the rest of the audience is like, God, they don't give a rat's fat fanny about anybody.
And who's going to want to come and present something when
If you're
they're
just
gonna
gonna,
get that
well,
time?
that fell on deaf ears. I'm sure glad I came here.
I guess why don't you address it and say, I will follow up with you at the break or at the end of the meeting. Please stay and I will follow up with you. If you can't stay, please, leave your contact information there and I will get hold of you.
Yeah, but Jason, that should really hold true if it's addressed to you. If it's addressed to the council, we all should have an opportunity.
Not really. If they have an answer that Dan Grassick could, well, we talked about that and we've got some documents. Can Dan forward that to you? What's your email address? And Dan can kind of bring you up to speed on whatever that is.
Well, and the other part of that is, if there are other people that are concerned about that, please meet with us also, because as Paul said, that information that was shared with a lot of people was very effective. And why address one when 10 other people are thinking the same thing?
Right.
Let's get them in there too, because they need to hear that answer, whatever that answer is.
Right. Someone watching on YouTube has no idea that, they may have been, you're right, asking themselves that same question. And it would have been nice if we could have had a little response, even if it was well, we disagree. I'm sorry, I'm going to agree to disagree with you, and I
if we
don't feel the
said,
same.
I'd like to respond, are there other people in the audience that want to hear the answer, and you got 5 people, okay, meet with me and Fred, but I'm with you too, maybe we all have something to say on the issue. I don't know, it's not an easy one to fix, but I know, bottom line is I'm not comfortable with it right now, and
Is anyone? I don't think any of us are. I don't feel comfortable with it. I don't know what the answer is, but I don't.
My previous 8 years on council, we didn't have that issue.
I don't remember ever this being an issue.
Okay.
So when I was angry, I guess I can see how it could have morphed.
Yeah.
It just morphed in a way that I don't like.
Let's just say this came about because of a number of series of meetings. And I mean, John used the example of one, but another one was where a gentleman came up and said, I have 7 questions. And then he didn't want to hear the answers to the questions. He already had the questions. He knew what he thought the answers were. He was going boom, boom, boom. Yeah. And then he would start to argue every time he would try to answer a question.
But then
So
his
those are
5
the-
minutes is up.
Right, and then, but they didn't have the 5
We're
minutes.
doing the 5
They
minute
didn't
clock.
have the 5 minutes at that
The
time.
5 minute helps a lot, for
That,
sure.
the 5 minute clock may be the only answer we
Maybe.
need to say, look, we can discuss this, make sure you give them as much of the 5, if they need all the 5 minutes, then I'm sorry, we have no time for discourse. But the 5 minutes makes all the difference, and if Paul calls 5 minutes is up, and there's still obviously more answers to say, oh, no, John can call you, if you leave your phone number, we'll be happy to call you and finish this conversation. Or Paul,
Okay.
or
I feel pretty comfortable with that we would use their time if they've finished in 2 minutes. And if we want to answer or discuss something, or we have an extra question, and then once their 5 minutes is up, then we move on to the next
You
person who
have
can
to
say.
interrupt a counselor, just like I interrupted you just now.
Yeah.
I said, "Yeah, I think I can do
With a smile, of course.
Well, I agree, it never used to be that way, and I think we occasionally had something that was bad, but I think we got a whole lot more good than a few times of bad than we have today.
Okay. Then I think we could just do that on consensus, really, as long as we're all in agreement.
Yeah, and actually, you can, this is kind of, it enters the area of the mayor's prerogative with respect to council rules that are otherwise written down.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I think you can just try it, see how it goes.
So we'll do that for our future meetings, and we'll be able to respond during the 5 minutes. If we feel, and at the end of that time, if it's ran out, then we'll refer to whoever needs to discuss that with them.
Well, I like to even stretch it a little more, if their 5 minutes run out, give the council 2 minutes opportunity, whether we take it or not.
At council discretion.
Yeah, to make some kind of response.
I think that's fair. 2 minutes is fine. Yeah.
That's enough to say it's either later or here's the quick pat them on the back.
But if it's been a 5 minute rant where they're obviously not open to a response, they just are escalated
Well,
and
that's
they're
it. Time's up.
ranting,
You're
their
pretty
time's
much
up, thank you for
When you
coming. I'm not engaging in that.
Because the one situation you guys were talking about was just really a rant, and there was really nothing that we could really
He was
address.
escalated
Yeah, right,
and nothing
yeah.
you did. And I think, as an audience member, you're listening to him do that and you're embarrassed for him. I mean, you know that nothing he's doing is productive. He's not communicating in a way that begs respectful discourse. I'm communicating in a way to just say shame on you, and I'm just I'm just puking this onto the planet. I'm not having a conversation. That's obvious.
But that's part of
Your
the
5
rules.
minutes is up, honey. I'm done.
So what are we gonna do with, Bill Sullivan's that come there, they would take 2 minutes to tell us, you guys are not doing your job, right?
I think those are the kind that could just say thank
You
you.
want 2 minutes to respond?
We could still respond, especially if he finishes in 2 minutes. I don't have a problem with that. I just, I think it just depends on the situation.
Yeah, what do you say? That's always for some of the comments.
Thank you for coming.
And then as soon as you do start responding to something like that, that's more of a blob out into the world, as you mentioned, then it becomes an argument.
I said puke.
I didn't want to use that word.
I just wanted for the record to be clear.
But, it's some of those things just aren't answerable, and then it becomes an argument. If we start saying, well, we are doing these things, and these things, well, who cares?
Yeah, and that's entirely correct. Much of the comment, particularly probably in the last year or so, and not all of it by any stretch, but a significant percentage really is more political opinion
Right.
than it is questions or suggestions or as you say, wanting to enter into productive discourse.
But I like what you said about thank you for sharing the
Yeah.
comment. That, there's some response back,
Yeah.
and it's not engaging, but we acknowledge that they
But
can.
if they were up here,
Even that,
we don't have to engage in that discourse. I
But-
mean, they ran for 5 minutes.
I would
Call
still
to
like
thank
to
them.
see-
I'm not gonna go thank you. And you go
well, or
back.
so noted, or something like that, so noted, thank you, whatever. I think
It's on
that's,
record. Welcome to YouTube.
that at least has closure.
Okay, let's go ahead and finish this up, and then we'll move into our goal setting session. But I will then move forward with that. We'll have a 5-minute period, and then we'll take, if the person's fulfilled that 5 minutes, then we'll take 2 minutes if we want to respond. And if we don't, we'll take them, and we move on.
Sounds good.
Okay.
And
Okay, next is goal setting session. Oh, I didn't have it on the, it's not on the agenda.
Yeah,
Did you?
it's one of those.
Oh, I'm sorry, my mistake. We have another opportunity for citizens' comments.
Wyatt,
Do we have any citizen that would like to comment?
Well, maybe you could just come up and test out on your policy.
Yeah.
Test out our new policy.
He's Facebooking.
yeah.
Working, actually, working on
Oh,
a quote,
Oh, okay.
being productive.
Okay, seeing no citizens' comments, we'll move on to the goal setting session. And per the city attorney, we don't really need to do an adjournment since we're still in session.
Correct. Well, Mr. Mayor and City Councilor, staff at this point is only prepared to discuss two items from the goal setting session. One regarding the comments and discussion regarding economic development and an economic development plan. And then the second is regarding police discussion and concerns about police staffing levels and how we got to the point of our current staffing, authorized staffing, and should that be revised, updated, whatever. So the first, I will attempt to address the first one, let me pass this out, and what I want to make clear from the get-go is, which I said in passing, but I'm not sure it really got into. No, okay. I'm not sure, I probably didn't make the point clearly and as incisively as I should have. City of Lebanon does not have a standalone discrete economic development plan. What we have is substantial economic development components, plan components, in a variety of places. First and foremost of those is the Lebanon's Comprehensive Plan, which was updated in June of 2005. In addition to that, we have major components in our 3 urban renewal plans. In addition to that, we have some specific work that's been done primarily in the area of distribution, and as Lebanon is a place to recruit new distribution centers over and above those. We also have a master plan from Samaritan Health Services, which obviously relates a lot to the future of the city regarding health services and education and businesses related to health services. So what I passed out here is not really a plan. What it is looking at what we would need to do and appropriately need to do in order to develop a discrete standalone economic development plan. And we talk about the challenges to the community. We talk about what would be potential objectives, and these objectives that are there on page 2 are objectives that are currently in the comprehensive plan or in our one or more of our urban renewal plans. How could we best, third part there, the keys to our economic successes. How could we best go forward and take advantage of what we've done successfully in the past? And then the third page is initial steps in devising an economic development plan, and what would be the specific steps of doing that, and then what would be some of the strategies, economic development strategies that could be part of or included in an economic development plan. So what I would suggest, if it's all right with the council, is if you would take the time to look through this, digest it. If it's your desire then to pursue something like this proposes, or obviously make changes to it as you see fit, then that would be staff's direction to go ahead and formulate a discrete standalone economic development plan. Timing of that, I would certainly like to see the new city manager here at least while that process is completed. So he or she has an opportunity to, at least towards the tail end, or maybe in the middle of that process, perhaps even at the beginning of that process, depending on council's wishes, could play a role in developing that plan. And then as attachments, and the second, after the plan is developed, then what we would need to do is go back and look at our comprehensive plan, look at our 3 urban renewal plans, look at our capital facilities plan, And I would say it's a high probability then we would want to do additional tweaking on some or all of those plans in order to have those plans accurately represent and help. And that would be basically the fulfillment, way to fulfill what we come up with in the way of an economic development plan. So you develop the plan, and then you go back and you review and update and almost certainly amend all of those plans. And as you can imagine, because there's, particularly with a comprehensive plan, a substantial public process, LCDC, Oregon State LCDC, Planning Commission, et cetera, that those changes, same thing with the urban renewal plans, those changes would take a good many months to actually complete and get in place and approved by the city council. So total timeline, you're probably looking the better part of this year, calendar year. So in order to get everything, put to bed and tucked away. So that's kind of my proposal, Mr. Mayor and council members.
So I think there's something to be said for starting the process of developing plans and reviewing plans with the new city administrator on board.
Yeah.
Because even though it seems it's very important, I would even say critical, but it's not urgent in that they might not have input or ideas of how they've done it somewhere else, besides that would help them be a little more intimate with each of our plans and understand the council's flavor for risk or business or, at the end of the process.
I think this document here is just the key to the kickoff of that development. And to list all the key components that go into making that full document along with all the other documents that have to match up with it. And I can see where it would be a lengthy process. I think having the new he or she manager on board is critical. And we don't have to have this done in 90 days.
Now, I'd see on this, you do have a lot of the groundwork here for us to get started on this. I would see you working with the new person and starting this project, getting it off, and then maybe we look at, I would think maybe next year, mid-year, like 6 months into the year, that gives the new person probably about a year to get this developed, and that way we can look at summer of next year by having it completed. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I don't want to rush that new person either. We don't want to put too much on the plate. But it's an important process that we want to make sure that moves along.
Yeah, welcome to Lebanon, you're already buried.
Yeah.
I would like to see an update, every 6 months or something.
Sure.
Or
Maybe the end of the year.
Quarterly, end of the year.
Yeah.
Where we're at, so that we have, that is a goal we want to reach and keep us appraised where we're at.
Well, in the meantime, barring a total reinvention of the plan, if you will, if any of us would have a specific economic goal, we may have a mechanism already in place to accommodate that. So it doesn't stop us from putting a little bit of meat on bones, where it's something specific.
Yeah, basically we're doing a lot of these things. It's just that it's not written anywhere.
We don't want to discontinue our vision in terms of bringing industry business to London. We want to recruit and find a way to accommodate any of those. Even though we are working on a plan, we still don't want to give up on the basis of why we're here.
So do we agree maybe starting this project when the new city manager comes in, letting them work on it for about a year, we get about mid-summer, July, we'll say, we look for a target. We can always adjust that. Yeah. And then maybe report by the end of the year. Do you think that's?
I do, Mr. Mayor. I think that's a good approach. Okay, anything else on the economic development plan? The
One plan that we discussed was the emergency operations plan. We just talked a little bit about that.
Oh, yes, we have copies of that actually, and I meant to give them to you already, Mr. Mayor. So we do have both a DVD version and a notebook version. So I have one in my office, usually the mayor has one, and then staff, key staff have a copy of the actual 3-ring binder version of it. And then we're in the press, it is posted?
It's on, yeah.
Okay, so it's posted on our website.
That was why I brought it up, because I actually got to
Oh,
look through it.
you're ahead of me then.
She had it posted
Yeah.
several days ago.
Very good.
I was able to go through it.
Thank you, Jim.
And I was able to have time to meet with Chief, and we talked about it. We've already got some ideas going forward. We've got a citizen in town, excuse me, who's part of the Rubicon team who went to the Hurricane Sandy and did house-to-house searching their veterans. And she certified a whole bunch of Homeland Security, and she's got a lot of certification, lives in town. Very, very interested in working with us, so we're going to talk to her. We're going to look at getting more citizen involvement with our emergency preparedness, and I want to see some more awareness. One of the questions she brought to me, and I just kind of looked like a scared deer, was where's our nearest, in Lebanon, where's my nearest shelter when there's a disaster? I didn't know, and I didn't know where to look, and I looked and I couldn't find it. So those kinds of things are things I think that we really need to get out to the community, and so that's something that we'll work on.
And council, if everybody's leaving town, council can't just leave town. There's things we may need to vote on. We've talked about that before.
Yeah, that's
And as council specifically, we need to know what is our responsibility when disaster strikes. You're not just packing up your family and heading for the hill. What do I specifically need to do? Because you're going to need some
Yes.
sort of authorization to move forward on some big stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, we discussed that, the chief and I both talked about that, and who's in charge, and who does what, and I met with the fire chief yesterday, and discussed the same kinds of issues with him, so I want to see more coordination between all of us. So that's something I plan on working on, and anybody else who wants to work on that with me can too. I think what I'll do is I'll bring back more information as we start meeting and talking more about it. But that's an area that I wanted to discuss, and I don't think there's really any action that we need to do on it, other than we're going to review it and then see where we need to go from there. Because there's probably going to be some updates we need to do to that.
Then the last thing that we have, staff asked Chief Stevenson if he could kind of brief all of you on, I think it's a copy there is part of your packet, or what's on your plate there today, where we are with the police department staff.
Everybody get a copy of the memo. On the back, I think the front side of the memo, what that's explaining is our allocation control study that was conducted back in 2008. Actually, it was conducted in 2009. It's based on 2008 statistics. And that was prior to us moving into our the Justice Center. That's prior to us running and operating a full-time jail. And also, additionally, that's with 20 officers. So, based on those statistics, what that shows and what that showed was officers, and what it is 30, what the national best practice is 30 minutes of obligated time versus 30 minutes of unobligated time per officer per hour. So 30 minutes obligated is reacting to calls of service. Unobligated is your proactivity, proactive calls, traffic complaints, walking downtown, community events, and so forth. What this study showed was that back in 2008, or based on 2008 statistics, and keep in mind this is without the jail and running and operating a full-time jail, officers were spending 34 minutes, I believe it's 34 minutes of obligated time, which is reacting to calls, and then 26 minutes of unobligated proactive time. So unfortunately, the study has not been done since 2008, since 2008. And it hasn't been done based on just officer leaving, sick. We've had our fair share of ups and downs with the police department. So it has not been completed since then. what I would like to do is, basically right now, I have 3 officers that we recently hired. And those 3 officers are currently in the academy. And we have 2 more positions, actually 2.475 or whatever that. Half-time, we'll call it part-time. We have an active recruitment going on right now for those 2 spots. Once I get everybody back, or once everybody's on board and those 5 officers are actually producing out on their own, which probably won't be until after the summertime before I get all 5 up and running. Plan on doing another study. I've already started putting some numbers together, but for me to do it right now, it'd be totally inaccurate. It'd probably show 95% is obligated, 5% is unobligated right now. Just the amount of calls that we are doing at the jail. So that's kind of the plan of what I intend to do. Hopefully have that for you as soon as I can get these guys up and running.
Is that like a 1-year study then? Or?
It's based on a 1-year real-time call for service study.
So we're like a year and a half out from knowing where we are. Is that what you're saying?
I mean,
Use previous statistics.
I could use previous statistics. I could use, I could go back for 2012 and put something together, but again, that's minus 5 officers that we've had. So it's going to show you, I feel it would show you something that's true, inaccurate. And I want it to be as accurate as I can, having all the positions filled that we've been lacking in order to give you guys a quick picture of what exactly is needed as far as staffing goes. I have my ideas, but I want you guys to see factual information.
So do you think the end of the year doing something then would be a little more accurate?
Yeah, I believe end of the year would be real accurate. I mean, in 2008, and this is just an example, in 2008, I believe there was 13,000 calls for service, a little over 13,000 calls for service. There was 20 officers. That was not operating the jail, that's not operating all the jail functions that go on with it. For 2012, I believe there was about 15 to 19 officers, fluctuated. There was over 14,000 calls for service and the jails thrown in there. So that's
to do it with 15% more calls and 15% fewer people.
correct. Yeah. So
That's never a good formula.
No, and but that's kind of why I wanted to wait until I get everybody and they're productive, and then we can reevaluate the study. First, I got to learn how to do the study. I think I have a pretty general good idea of how to do it just by researching the stuff that Schulte and Mike Huey did. But I really want to make sure I learn how to do it before I present it to you.
Are the 5 positions going to get us back to where we were, say, in 2008?
Yes. Basically, we have 3 positions that I have filled right now, or for officers leaving, retiring, or leaving. The 2 remaining positions are going to be to backfill our motor positions, if that's making sense.
Yeah.
So those.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I didn't follow this. There's 15 full-time equivalents, which includes 3 new. So essentially that's 12 that we have right now. And then there's 1 on leave, so that's 11. Is that what we have right now is 11? Is that the bottom line?
Yeah.
For patrol.
Yeah.
Spread amongst 4 shifts?
Spread amongst 4 shifts.
Yeah.
And handling the jail.
And handling the jail. So what we have running right now is 3 officers per shift. And we have 2 officers running a cover shift, so they're working noon to midnight. So you're going to have 4 officers, basically,
Peak time.
yeah, during your peak times. And,
Does that include a field supervisor?
yeah, that's including the field. So we have 1 supervisor and 2 officers
Okay.
per shift.
Are you talking about, go ahead.
What's been our, just looking since 08,
Well, keep in mind, that's always hard.
I was gonna say, I don't know if we'll ever maintain that.
Yeah, probably not long-term. Because injuries are very common, workman's comp injuries are very common there.
People coming to jail.
Yeah, so,
The statistics at 100% are gonna be similar, mostly.
As far as staffing.
Yeah, it's like patrol time. You would love to have 100% patrol time, but that's not what can happen. It has to be, is it 40%?
Is it 85 or 90 or?
Yeah, it just depends on what is ours right now?
What's
Patrol time versus non-allocated time, or I guess that's what it's, there's a chart in here.
Back in 2008.
This was back in 2008.
So we don't really have an idea on that. Is there any way we could find that out fairly easily, just that one figure? It'd be interesting to see what the allocation would be.
Yeah.
Or is that pretty complex?
Again, that's something I'd have to dive into. I don't think it'd be too complex as far as, going back to, I'd go over 2012 and, put something together based on what we had.
The observation is it'll be skewed because of the fact that we're short, but the fact that we're short
Still be
is what's skewing our numbers, which identifies a need for more personnel. So I think the horse is already in front of the cart, right? I mean, we just need to open up.
Yeah.
I feel like I don't need to have another year and a half of your guys being stretched thin out there to understand that maybe a staffing increase is something that needs to be looked at or considered. And if you have ideas or you have your vision, I'd love to hear it or see it, because I think who better than you to convey what your vision for the department is right now.
Right.
well, and I should add too, and I think it's in Frank's memo there somewhere, but he has asked for an additional patrol position as well as additional dispatch position for next fiscal year, starting July 1st. And I'm not as sure about the dispatch position, but very tentatively it looks like we're going to be able to work in the additional patrol position.
First shift or?
No, I'm talking about just one FTE, one additional FTE, patrol FTE.
And the way it would look right now is I'd have a 4-man team, so I'd have 4 officers per shift. We keep the cover shift. We're gonna have 2 motor officers. As soon as I can get people back from the academy, and we hire the 2 additional. And since we brought it up, that one additional position that I'm asking about would be for a full-time Monday through Friday be patrol, but it'd be designated to the jail. So we work from 11 to 7 shift in the jail. That way officers don't have to come in, come off the road during peak hours to take care of the jail. Be strictly staffed by someone that will do that.
I think that's really
And that's, and I understand what you're saying too, but I want to get a real clear vision of, okay, now I just hired these 5, I'm asking for 1 more. I don't want to just keep asking. If I had it my way, I'd have 5 officers.
Every chief.
Yeah, but I am, but that's, and that's what I'm talking about, where I want to get a clear picture once I get these guys back. These 5 individuals up and running to see, obviously you'll be looking at it and asking.
I just know the public service propensity is to say, we got it, we're okay. And I want to make sure you know it's okay to say, I think we need more, please help us or whatever.
I can honestly sit here today and say, yeah, we need help. As of right now, we're reacting to calls, we're being as proactive as we can, but we're also limited to what, with the jail and what's in that case, which is very important. I do not want to go away from the jail. I love the jail. I love holding people accountable, misdemeanors and crimes that we're dealing with, because it is making an impact. We are able to hold these individuals accountable. Trey can speak on that too. It's just, so.
I think for an important goal for you guys, I think is definitely the full-time jailer, because I really see that opening up your patrol, getting those guys back out on the streets, and having that person there being able to do all the jail functions. I think that's a really important goal for you guys.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. We had an individual who was working 11 to 7, and that position, this is my injured officer on my duty huge, huge benefit to that shift, and just in the short brief time that we had it. And what I saw was officers not in the office, I saw them out on the road, and that was, it was very good to see that. Again, that was a short fix, I want that long time fix. So,
And does that begin to address the problem of not being able to house people longer than we currently do?
it will begin to, and that's another thing, is the jail, what we need to do is establish medical, to get them past the 14 days. Right now it's only 14 days, so we have to establish a medical protocol and a policy in order for us to get into those past 14 days and 30 days longer stay. But yes, it will start addressing that issue, because once we have people staying there longer, we're going to need more. We need people checking on them regularly, and there's going to be more needs for these inmates that are staying longer too. So, you know, ultimately, I like for these inmates to start doing community events, and paint up parks, paint whatever we need them for, you know. Or if there's an individual who needs their yard, and they can't get to it, you guys can come out and do something like that.
Takes a lot of manpower to do that.
It does take a lot of manpower, you know. That's what I envision.
That piece is probably a little.
That piece is a little, I mean, I just get.
Jason told him to ask John.
You never ask him.
Yeah, thank you, Jason.
Five
Just
additional.
because you know,
Since we're in the middle, well, I'll take 5 additional. Yeah. So, but, you know, I agree, I'd love to throw that, so I'd have statistics for you. Part of it is me learning how to gather that information, which I'm slowly starting to get. But also, I want to make sure that I want to give you guys as true and accurate as I can.
Well, I don't know about everyone else, but if you went back and looked at 2012, I'm happy with the back of the envelope broad stroke, not polished. It doesn't have to compare apples to apples per se, I mean, style, et cetera, to the old report. But if you look at it and get a general, 50 minutes to 10 minutes timing, something like that, that would be good enough for me.
Yeah, I think
It's
we
history.
can.
And you've been acting chief for like 3 months. What is it?
Yeah.
What's it to
Good
learn?
God. Step up.
I know, right? Well,
I'm totally kidding. Do not blog that.
Sorry,
I'm serious.
Already tweeted.
You're in the Twitterverse.
But I hope that answers, you know, and I have something I just threw together real quick, and it's for 2012, but it doesn't really show obligated, non-obligated, and this is something I just threw together, but it just kind of goes through the statistics of calls per year and what kind of calls, real general. It's nothing you guys have, it's something I just,
That's all good.
Looks like you have color. Mine's not color.
So motor stuff, we're gonna have to send new guys to motor school or train in-house. is what I'm
We'll be able to train them in-house.
How long does that take?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. And then we got two other guys there?
That's what I'm hoping.
Great.
And we already have the equipment.
Already have the equipment, everything's there, it's just kind of in limbo stage, so it's just a matter of getting, you said you can these other 2 hired, and getting that motor program back up and running. So the beauty of it is we don't have to send anybody away for training, everything's right here, right now, so
That's great. There's interest amongst current officers to do that.
yeah.
Surprising.
Huh?
Surprising.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You know, I mean, and I didn't even touch on the detectives division right now. There's only 2 detectives working cases, and we're actually going to be backfilling, not necessarily backfilling, but throwing another detective in there, starting next Monday, who will also be helping out the jail, so he's going to be doing 2 duties at the same time.
How are the 2 detectives' caseloads right now?
Huge, yeah, barely keeping their heads above water. It's busy for them. You got one detective who is focused solely on child
and pet his hair, because I was kidding with that.
There's been a lot of moving and shaking going on with the police department, so there's just basically plugging people where we need them for right now, kind of, Band-Aid over the dam. So, like I said, these 5 spots it's been huge not having these 5 spots for a period of time, so. But yeah, to get up to full staffing, we're talking, there's always something that comes up, which amazes me. There's always something. You just get those people hired, and then this person gets hurt, gets sick or something.
How do we fill injured positions? We OT that or temp hire, or what do you guys do for that?
It's usually filled if needed with OT, yeah. To temp hire somebody for a police officer who's been a top rater is extremely hard because there's so much involved in hiring a police officer. You know, it'd be nice if I had a pool of people that I could say, hey, you want to come in and work for the next 4 weeks? But that just doesn't happen. There's a lot of training and stuff that goes into it. But, I wish I had that option.
One of the things you and I talked about too was trying to beef up the reserve program.
Yeah, yeah.
So that we have that backup.
Exactly.
And we don't have, how many do we have right now? About?
3.
3.
3 reserves.
And then you said 15 years ago we were at?
Probably about 10.
Yeah.
15. I mean, it was, just, we have about 10, 15 reserves at any given time, but now it's just kind of, it's real slim. And I think part of the issue there is we kind of went away from the reserve program and dealing with the reserve program because we've been so focused on patrol functions and jail functions, detective functions, dispatch functions, so the reserves kind of got pushed aside a little bit. But it's like we were talking about this in staff the other day, and we definitely want to get the reserve program back up and running because it's such a huge support to us. The reserves that we have right now are awesome. Our volunteers are awesome. But someone kind of pulled me back and said, Frank, those are the sprinkles on the cupcake. We've got to get the foundation first, obviously before we build the house. So the foundation is our patrol function. So we've got to get that back up to speed.
When you want to set this up? How are you guys?
I'll be back in order.
20th? 420? That's what everyone's gonna think.
Why'd that pop
It's
right
like
in the-
completely the opposite.
Okay, we've covered the, I was looking back at our notes from our goal setting session, the determine and fulfill, and it's in our minutes from last meeting, in the reminder. We did determine and fulfill police staff, and I think does everybody feel pretty comfortable that we've gone over that enough? And then the economic plan, we've discussed that and updating that. And that's something definitely that the new city manager will have work on with city manager John Hitt. And then the last one is the improved communications and relationships at all levels. And we've got some points here. We've got employee satisfaction, annual survey evaluation. Now that was carried over from a previous goal from last year. That was supposed to be done by the end of the year, I think it was. That was what the goal was. I would like to see that done probably before the city manager gets here, so that it's in the new city manager's hands.
We can do that, that's no problem.
If that's,
I think that's a great idea.
yeah, that way it's kind of a temperature on it, what's going on.
And you could do then, if it was annual thereafter, you could say, look, before he got here, here at the 1 year point, 2 year, 3 year, you could gauge movement.
So would, let's say by the end of April, would that be satisfactory to everyone? Yeah, that would be my goal, but it's up to me, but.
Sure.
Okay.
Improved media relations.
She wants to.
She's not gonna react.
She doesn't care.
One of the things that we had talked about was a committee for communications. And I think Jason, myself, Trey, and John, I'd like to get one more counselor on that committee. And I would also like to talk about having one of the persons from the media, maybe Audrey, if she was willing to do that, to sit in on our committee meetings too.
Sure.
Would you be
Yeah,
willing?
that'd be great.
Okay.
I wouldn't mind
Would you? Okay.
if you would
Sure.
Whatever.
We may have to take a vote.
I was talking to,
But, yeah.
clearly talking to.
Yeah, that would be great, sure. You are a communicator.
Yes, that's a nice way to say it. They do communicate.
And so we'll set up that committee, and let's see, what I would like to do, and I discussed this with Trey and John before, is create a communications policy, kind of like what we did with the Facebook communications. But this would be specifically on dealing with the media, the public, our openness, transparency, all the different things would be in this policy, basically, so that we would know how to follow it. It would even be things like, you know, if there was an emergency, who is the speaker for that particular emergency? Who's the person who speaks for the city, for the city hall, things like that. So I think that's things we can determine and work on that. So we'll get that committee going, and I'll work on setting us up a meeting. Let's do April.
Would it be too many people to have like Alex Paul there?
I don't think so, actually, and I think that would probably be good input too. I could contact him and see.
Well, it's quite possible that Audrey rejected you, and so, she didn't commit.
No, I said yes.
No, she
I
did.
said yes, that's
I got a
right.
thumbs up from
Now
her.
who's not listening?
Yeah, because someone was communicating.
Oh, I am a communicator.
Yeah, no, I think we can contact Alex, and I think that would be good to get his input also. And then that actually will kind of go towards the improved communications, public and employees and media. On the communications policy, maybe what we could do is come up, what would we want to see as the date to come up with this policy? We have a meeting or two, get things drafted and bring it to council. I don't want to get pushed too much. I know staff is really busy right now, so.
By June.
June, that's kind of what I was thinking. Okay. 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 Council and department department manager work sessions. One of the things I'm concerned about right now is staffing. I'm really concerned about the levels of work, and I may be stepping out of bounds here, and you can answer that right there.
Okay.
But I'm just concerned I don't want to overburden, even one meeting a month I see, and I never knew this until being mayor now, putting together even the agenda, it is a huge, huge task. It is a lot of time and a lot of work, and it takes Jamie and a whole bunch of other people, Linda, and so I don't want to overburden them with too many, but to me, this work session and the last one have been fantastic. I think we've really gotten a lot done. I think we've got a lot of ideas out. We have an opportunity to share. But do you guys have any ideas on what we'd like to see?
I don't understand the question.
Well, it says, this was just under improved communications was one of the topics that we had on the papers, and it was improved communication and openness, public influence. I'm sorry, the next one down.
Having more work
Council
sessions.
department manager work sessions, yeah.
Mm.
I think, I'm not sure, but that could have also sort of, I might have started that, but it might have
Okay.
morphed, but
Okay.
part of what I envisioned with that is, you referred earlier to the meeting that was informative for the public with data and graphic. Back in the 90s, we had a push to have that kind of a meeting when major, like if a new clarifier was needed at the sewage treatment plant, and we would have neighborhood meetings and have the department head go into the Lutheran church or the middle school auditorium or whatever, and before the event, and educate people. And I personally saw a lot more public buy-in. I saw people coming into meetings that were, and they'd leave going, that's some good information, right? We really needed to do that. Or, and you know, I saw that kind of thing pretty regularly. Now, there were certain people you'll never please, but I thought it was really effective. And I thought overall the pulse of the community and what we were trying to do was more in line with what reality was. And So that's kind of what I was thinking, that more of that before, not trying to clean up the mess, but trying to get people on board before major things happen. Proactive. And as for example, as the water treatment plant, even though it's a given, it's going to happen before it's constructed, it would be neat to have a series of those in neighborhoods that show the conceptual plans, kind of the cost, why we needed it, what it's going to do, etc. And have people have a chance to ask questions, etc.
That's very good with you.
Yeah, I don't know if we necessarily need another, I mean, because what's the difference between a work session and a meeting?
Well, meetings where we have a set agenda, and then the work session is more where we kind of have this general topic of goals. And we go through the different things and come up with ideas and where we want to progress. And then also, I guess a work session would be considered if we all were convening at a room here or wherever it would be, and presenting something like the new water treatment plant or something like that. Then it would be, we have an official meeting, but it's more of a work session. It's not like we're conducting a lot of business.
Right. I like it on an as-needed basis, and that kind of thing doesn't require a quorum, or doesn't really require us to do that. And I'm okay with bumping to a work session and if we've got things that we need to do. I like during the day work sessions and evening meetings, but.
Well,
We read them earlier for you.
I know, I'm so excited. Thank you.
Let me add to it, it's a little bit easier on staff, or if we're gonna do a monthly or semi-weekly or whatever it is, study or work session, if that's during the day versus
Right.
another night.
Albany does they do a Monday noon work session and then a Wednesday or something. They have some one work session that they do that's just planned, so they can like pre-discuss some of the items that are gonna be on the agenda or something, and I wouldn't mind something like that.
That's exactly where I was gonna go thinking.
I like to talk all the
Other than
time.
our second city council meeting per month, which we don't have a need for, we use that Wednesday for a daytime work session. And
Yeah.
have that around the departments to give us feedback on their department goals, and we have an open discussion with them about their department.
How do you think that is on staff, going back to 2 a month, which is not 2 full meetings, but a work session and I agree, it would be nice to have access to staff and be able to discuss some of these things like we did with the chief today. That was really nice.
You know, I don't know whether that's one staff or 2
Yeah, I
topics
think
per meeting.
I think it's better if it's somewhat focused yet, and
Yeah.
probably more at most 3 topics, and most of the time only 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's got a lot of merit. We can certainly do that.
Because we do have a lot of work coming up, and we're going to have the city manager hiring and those things, so. Okay.
I think it opens, I mean, we haven't had the citizens come to these, but if they're scheduled, every Wednesday or Monday, I don't care about the day really, maybe they'll begin to come into those.
Any comments on that? Okay. Improving customer satisfaction. And I'm assuming that's just with the citizens of the water, utilities, anybody who's dealing with the city. Your customers.
That was one of my pushes, and I think I can maybe see some input from the managers on how they best think a survey or a questionnaire or some sort of satisfaction survey could be used, and then that data gets saved. So when we have interactions, good, bad, or ugly, they're tracked, they're logged, and that information can be used by the managers or by us to determine how well we're doing.
I have feel a little lot in that.
Have we done one on the water bill? I know we have the ability to put a message on there. Have we done a survey?
We have not, at least not in a long time.
You put it on the water bill, you're only gonna get ticked off. I mean, I can tell you how that's gonna be.
Well, I envision at every point of contact, whether that's City Hall's front desk or the Justice Center, front window, where else do we have public contact? library, senior center, a standardized pamphlet that,
How are we
or
doing?
whatever, you know, a trifold survey, how are we doing, it's right there, there's a box there, or they can mail it in, whatever they wanna do, but it's available, it's obvious, they can pick it up, and they, you know, if they say, boy, Carol she just did a fantastic job, and I wanna, you know, it can be almost similar to what you get in a restaurant, when you put your check down, it's a quick, down and dirty, maybe you put a number rating to it, or you give it A, B, C, D, and that gets directly to whatever appropriate department manager or head needs to see it. And also, I would like to see copies of that in a read file, so that we can see who's being recognized for great work and whose areas might need some improvement or some extra attention.
Historically, we've had that in our read files.
Yeah, we
Not
people,
whenever one.
People write a letter.
Yeah.
Exactly. But this would be a standardized city form, and
We had one of those several years ago.
Yeah.
Got a print that people weren't using them.
seems like
But it's worth redoing.
seems like it would be a lot easier to track and do something productive with if it were electronic.
Yeah, and maybe you could do something on the website where they do a form. Put it in
Right,
there.
and
So
you
we
do
should
it,
have
and
that
you-
on the website. They can go in and make comments, complaints, recommendations, questions.
But maybe formalize it more.
how's that being utilized?
I've never seen it.
You know, it's printed out periodically. It goes automatically, it's automatically run to the department head that it's related to. If it's uncertain or unknown, it comes to me. And then, the department head has to log in what his or her response was. And,
Maybe that's
Maybe
just
it's
not
promoting
common.
it. Yeah, maybe it's
Yeah.
promoting.
Personally, that's great if you run across an officer on the street or whatever, but where we seem to be having issues are at the point of contact places. That's where we seem to be having, we're getting some negative
yeah.
connotations in there.
So like at the counters, you're
Exactly,
talking about, yeah.
exactly. And so if it's there, and if I have good interaction, I'm gonna fill this out. You know, that person was pleasant, they were helpful, whatever. And if I have a bad interaction, I guarantee they're gonna grab two of them, but they'll do it. And by the time they get home though, or the internet doesn't work, or whatever. Sometimes the old pen and paper way I think is best.
Sometimes, yeah.
And for the low cost involved in printing a trifold 8.5 by 11 sheet, I don't think it's a cost deterrent. So, is that something though that the department heads would want to have? I think they would want that, to know good or bad.
You know, there might be a mixed feeling. But I think it's something you do citywide or you don't do citywide. And I think there's a lot of merit to doing it and having everybody use the same form and same ranking or rating standard and whatever that may be. And I think we'll probably also refer people to the city website that don't want to bother filling anything out and do want to go home and get on the computer and say something.
The same form will be right there.
Here's where you do it, www, click this, click that, and you're on. And so we could do that as well.
The problem with that, you know, and I think any information we get, we should look at and do something with. The problem with quantifying it sometimes is, what does it really say? For example, when we passed a bond to build the Justice Center and the library, that was not 100% vote. So if it was 25% against or whatever that would be, that 25% of the public immediately has a mindset that that was horrible and a waste of money, etc. So what their feedback is going to mirror that. And even though it's, so you got negative feedback, but it's on something that the majority of the people have spoken that they really, really want.
And the people that wanted it are silent on it,
Yeah.
because they got what they want. So all
Exactly.
you're getting is negative feedback.
Yeah, if the guy that prepared that nice correspondence earlier was to go to one of our establishments, I can almost imagine what any feedback would be like, because the filters are already set. So that's the problem, I think, with quantifying it to some degree, but I still like the idea of being able to see it and respond to it and glean anything you can get.
Well, like you said, what do you measure? There's a certain subconscious message being sent to the citizens and also the employees who work in these areas. When they know that that survey is sitting right there, and any citizen can pick it up, I don't care who you are going to crank up your customer service.
I agree.
To the 10th degree. Because you know, if you are rude, if you are disrespectful, if you have attitude, that citizen's gonna grab that form, fill it out, and it's gonna hit your supervisor's desk at some point.
Right.
If you are polite, if you are courteous, if you show respect, which is what we expect as a city for our employees to demonstrate, that citizen will probably pick up that form and fill it out in a neutral or positive way, and that will make it to your supervisor's desk as well.
Right.
So it's almost.
Well, what I'm getting at
Positive
is,
they won't.
what I'm getting at is one.
I think, I disagree with that.
I would.
I think they will.
I do it all the time. I mean, when that bill hits my table and there's a little survey in the check, now sometimes we're in a rush, we don't do it. But if it's quick, if it's 5 questions and I fill out the bubbles with the pen that I sign my receipt with, and yeah, this gal is a great server, and you know.
I only do it when I'm hungry.
Honestly.
What I'm getting at
person.
a little bit is I have a business, and one of the things that we do is answer customer issues for doctor's offices. And occasionally you get someone on that phone who you're wrong before you answer.
Always.
And you will be wrong when you leave, and they, how dare you, the first time you even ask for clarity or whatever. We were even turned over to the Better Business Bureau at one point because the hospital collected some money in a way they didn't like. It wasn't even our portion of the collection, or, you know, and it's like, that person obviously got that communication down really right. And that's what I'm saying about quantifying it, that there needs to be when you measure numbers too much, they can gain a value that sometimes they shouldn't have. Because that person rated me in a certain way that would affect my rating if I had one. And I don't think we earned that. Because we didn't even handle the money they were referring to, or the people that call us and we're just wrong. It's nice to be able to sort of isolate that. And I guess what I'm saying is, let's make sure we get to the message more than we do the measurement or percentage of it.
It will allow you to see a pattern.
Yeah.
There will not be some great conspiracy theory of 30 people coming in over a 2-month span and marking the same employee down on the same issues.
Right.
Because that won't happen.
Right.
So you might get one come in and you're going to give, John Doe at the counter at the Justice Center zeros because he was so terrible to work with.
Right.
But that'll happen one time out of 25. If he gets 24 out of 25 and he's a 2 across the board, we have an issue with John Doe. And that supervisor needs to be aware of that if he's not already. And now here it is, and not only is the supervisor aware of it, but the council is as well, and the city manager is aware of it as well. And there's a little more accountability. And also, we got to remember, it's also a way to recognize the good that our people are doing. And we can really push that to the citizens, whether it's through the Facebook or through our own personal interactions with people. If you see someone doing something great, grab one of those forms before you leave, fill it out, and we'll recognize them for that.
Yeah, I like the how did we do concept, not, tell us all the bad stuff about us.
Complaint.
Complaint.
You'll get some of those. You're going to get a run of those, but eventually, either you're going to improve your service, or the people that scream and fight will get tired of filling out the negative cards all the time, and they'll give up. But
Yeah, I guess part of what I'm trying to say too is that when you go to certain departments like the water department, there's a certain element of those people that are angry, basically at us, and they're gonna take it out on the person at the desk. And that's not really fair. And I've been in the city hall before when a person walked in and they were unloading the second they got in there, whoever that is. And if we looked at statistics too much and said, well, that person's got twice as many complaints, they may be at the desk all the time.
right.
And so they're gonna be a target for a policy that we made.
Well, if it's done right too, you can also have in there is it the city policy that you had an issue with, or was it the person that you had the issue with?
Well, I
You
think
can actually
that'll
separate
come
that out.
across, and I think, yeah, they're angry before they come in, but you can't, as an employee, let that jade you and let that
Yeah.
affect your next,
You're
because I think that is, the potential is to, I don't even know, to be defensive before you even come to me with your issue, and then I'm gonna come across snippy and rude, and I don't care. And you what, you got a problem, you go to talk to the council. You know, well, that's not the tone you need to set, and I really apologize, and I understand our rates are very high, and I feel really bad. We have a couple programs, if you wanna take a look at that. I mean, that's just a different tone.
Yeah.
Then it's not my problem, you go to council, you know, that's basically, I don't care.
Well, but understand, and I've overheard a lot of conversations up there where nobody saw me, because you can go to a place there, public person can't see me, nobody on the counter staff can see me. And often in that particular case is they're mad about the bill, the amount of the bill, and they hammer the employee about the amount of the bill. And when the employee says, I can't forgive or reduce your bill, the only one that can change the amount that your bill is based on your consumption, and they always talk about consumption, but based on your current consumption, the only one that can address that is the city council. Now, usually that comes across then when somebody complains, well, they just told me go talk to the city council. Well, that's sort of true, but often sort of not really true too. So, and I'm not trying to say we always handle it perfectly, we don't. But I will say the many times I've stood there and listened, I've never had to go in after that encounter was done and go in and tell our city staff person, I thought you were rude or you didn't handle it. Could in several cases could have been a bit better? Yes, it could have been a bit better. And I told them that, and I told them why I thought it could have been a bit better. But did I ever hear a case where I thought that they had in any significant way departed from good customer service behavior and standards? No. No, that's not to say it never happened, that I didn't hear, but I do quite a bit of cross-checking on that on a fairly regular basis. And despite what you hear, what you see on the blog sites and letters to the editor and all of that, you know, I feel pretty good that generally our score of being reasonable and fair and proper is pretty high.
And so that goes back to my original point that, you know, because I do think it is a fine line, because I see both sides, but I do worry that someone is, there's a percentage, there's a percentage more likely that people are to respond to something if it's negative. I mean, they're gonna proactively do something about it, and if it's neutral and or, you know, positive, they're just gonna go about their day. You know, so I worry that, but I think Jason might be right too. A lot of that will probably happen up front, and you know, once it levels out, it may help you see a pattern. Well, Susie doesn't, you know, get, and everybody complains about Jamie, so you know.
Well, everybody complains about Jamie.
I know, right?
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is kind of like what John is saying, because I think until you've been in the business, it's hard to imagine, but I listen to the people on the phone in my office, and I hear, sometimes you can hear the other person croaking, you know, through the receiver, and go, I don't even get it, I don't know how that could go together. But that person's perception is that person was rude, and I've had people accuse me of being rude. I'm trying so hard not to be rude. So that's what I'm talking about. First off, I don't think all departments are created equal, and the thing about water and sewer is the amount. When they call my office, they're mad because the colonoscopy was $1,200. I didn't do that, I'm sorry. You know? And so it's hard to get to what is really the issue in that case. And I'm with you. I don't know what could correct that other than that person getting a better educated or maybe more tact. You know, it's like you said, it's hard to respond to people that cross certain lines. There are people who will do that regardless of what is there. With that said, I agree with you, but that's why I was just saying, I think it's important to be careful how we weight them or analyze the number portion of it. But let's get to the content. All good content is always good to have.
Right, and please don't understand my remarks as being any way cruel to Jason's idea. I'm totally supportive. Again, we used to do that. I'm not really quite sure how we got out of the habit of doing it, but that's a good time to reinstate.
And again, there's no negative reputation here. There's nothing punitive in my mind that comes out of this, other than if we see a pattern, we fix it. Maybe we have a pattern, and we keep talking about the water desk. Maybe there's something going on there that needs to be addressed. Maybe there's maybe there's some training we can provide that can improve public relations. I don't know, but
Even could be for the library or the
could
senior
be
center.
anywhere, or the senior center, or the justice center, or whatever. But if something needs to be addressed, we at least need to have the ability to look at it and not get defensive about our own people, because all that does is throw up the veil of protection and conspiracy and covering up. And if someone is not good at customer service, maybe they shouldn't work at a front counter where their job is to deal with angry customers all day long. That shouldn't seem like a brain surgery move there, but maybe that's not the right person, or the right job for that person. And I understand how every job is different. Some are different than others, and in my job, it's it's another chest pain call. Well, to you, it's really important because it's your chest pain. To me, it's the 1200th chest pain call I've run in my career, and it's just another 1, 2, 3 day. Doesn't mean it's any less important, but I still need to provide you with great service and great customer service. I need to reassure you because I know it's your first time. Someone that comes in here to complain or to deal with something, it's probably one of their first times they're having to deal with someone at a counter or complain to a manager or whatever. And if they get the wrong vibe right off the bat, they're going to go tell 10, 15 people that they were treated poorly. If they're treated well, they're going to tell 2 people. That's the nature of the beast. But I think if we could show an effort to the citizens that we are listening to your concerns rather than just ignoring your concerns, I think that might go a long way.
There has to be a way, I know like call centers, engage companies that just take a random sample of inbound phone calls and listen to them and use those as training moments. I mean, it's 1% of your calls or 0.5%.
We started to do that.
Really?
Not from an outside company, but with ourselves, internally.
See, that's good to know that.
And you should be advised too, and I'm not trying to be defensive, trying not, that the complaints I've got over the years is pretty equally spread amongst our folks, even people that only work at the water desk on a very part-time basis. If you look at it prorated, they get just as many complaints as the people that spend 70 or 80% of their time waiting on the customers. And whether it's person A, B, C, or D, again, based on the percent of time at the front counter, the complaints are pretty much equally distributed. And we do send them to customer service and dealing with difficult person training and dealing in challenging situations training on a very regular basis.
The bottom line, we should have forms available.
But the form should be available, I agree.
And another thing too that we didn't really discuss would be suggestions on there too. Things that the city could do different. No,
Go do this.
we have a few suggestions.
Yeah, there's a suggestion.
No, I mean seriously, there are people who would maybe have a positive suggestion that we could do this way or that way.
A standardized form would be great.
Yeah.
No.
Where you can share the same.
And we already have it, we just need a principal.
Yeah, get it up to date, yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to make it sound like I'm against it, so I think I said I'm overwhelmingly in favor of the idea.
And the purpose is not to put our people on a hot seat and roast them. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to let the public have a voice and express concern, and for us to see it, document it, log it, respect it, and move on. And if it hits a certain critical mass point, we'll address it. But until then, if the manager doesn't feel that it's critical, and we don't feel it's critical, then it's business as usual, but duly noted.
Anything else on that? We work on that, John?
I said,
Okay.
that wouldn't take long at all.
Okay. And then the last one on the list, and I don't really think this is a measurable goal that we can set, but build citizen trust and confidence. And that's one of the concerns that we have that we put on the list. And I think honestly that the things that we've talked about in improving the communications and relationships, I think that does that. I think that's kind of the end result of what happens. Not that we have to have an action item for that, but as we've talked, trying to just be more responsive, even talking about the council procedures, so that people don't feel weird. One of the other things I wanted to kind of go back on that council procedures, I talked to Linda and we were gonna work on some things about actually getting some more stuff out on the website on how do you, what to expect when you come to a council meeting if you want to present stuff. I've seen this on another one and I need to find that website, but it was kind of like an information, or maybe we could even put it out there so when people come in, if someone wants to present, they can be prepared, at least have a little bit of understanding of, you get 5 minutes, there's a red light, you know, maybe just explain that.
Nerve-wracking.
Yeah, I know, it is, it's very, mouth gets,
I wouldn't
you
even
know,
try
it's
it.
just scary. Yeah, and I agree, and the,
I've seen that somewhere else too, that it was,
Yeah.
there was like a one-page thing on their website, what to expect at our council meeting, and it talked a little bit about the procedure, and talked a little bit about the
Yeah.
flow of the meeting, and when you could speak, and who could speak.
yeah, and as we kind of solidify the whole communications part of it, then we could present that to people. I think that would be good. Well, that's what we have on our list. And on the economic development plan, we talked about recruiting industry. That's part of the plan. Downtown revitalization, which would be part of the plan. But the one that's a little different is the Consider Parks and Recreation District is on there. And I don't know. I know that's probably a whole meeting by itself, or maybe a couple meetings on it. But it was on there. It's one of the things that I've discussed with some people that have brought to my attention, and that was one of the reasons I mentioned it. Did you have some?
Well, just to let you know, and this doesn't mean that we shouldn't try again. Since I've been here, 13 years I've been here, I think at least 2, maybe 3 attempts, actually I think 3 attempts to do that. And every time, well, the first time it was when the current pool district was formed. And it was originally, that committee was originally going to be a broader based recreational district. Somehow, some ways, a group within that broader group said, nah, we don't care about any recreation about the pool. We want this to just focus on aquatics, and end of discussion, we're done talking about anything else, and that's what got put on the ballot and got approved. And since then, the other 2 times, I believe, and I'll have to double check, because maybe I'm remembering this wrong, but because we already have an aquatics district in place, we have to either have the aquatics district voted out or the aquatics district mission expanded to include Parks and Rec, and the tax base expanded. And therefore, we would need that board's approval to do that, and twice when that board has been approached in the past, who knows, maybe all different board today, I don't know. They have been cool, once very cool, the other time they kind of hemmed and hawed, but in final analysis decided they probably didn't feel prepared to go down that road at that time. So, doesn't mean we couldn't make a 3rd try, just give it a little history.
You can't have an aquatic district and a Parks and Rec district?
There was something sticking in the back of my mind, yeah, that you can't, and I can't remember what there was exactly about that, but yeah, the aquatics district has to go away, or they have to broaden their umbrella to include additional recreational activities. They could also ask for a tax rate increase at that same time, or they could go with the existing tax rate, which is very low. But
I do know that this year in the House, there's a House bill being proposed that's going to revamp Measure 5, which is the compression cap.
yeah, compression.
So that could be very beneficial to local jurisdictions who are looking for Parks and Recs districts, who are looking for operating levies or public safety levies or serial levies. You would, if the community votes it in, the community wants to pay for it, there is no more compression.
Right.
It will be added to their tax. So that's something that maybe we can follow through the LLC or.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because that did ring a bell. That was, I think, their primary objections before.
Because they would want compression.
That a broader tax base would, you know, county was against it, the sheriffs, you know.
Oh, everyone's against it.
Everybody's saying,
That's
oh,
in your pie.
Yeah, exactly, so.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. I don't.
I understand that.
But if this House bill goes through and
Be a
gets
different
carried through, it'd be a much different story.
Well, and also, I believe, the library district concept was kind of,
Fell into the same
it's on
thing.
hold, but I think it's coming back.
Yeah.
And that would be competition for the same. And I think people are reluctant to just get a lot of the districts. So who would win in that, I don't know.
In that, if the council was interested in that, is it the council that moves forward with that, or is it more of a group of people that get together to form that?
Well, again, my understanding, at least at this point, we would have to get they actually would have to be the aquatics district.
They would be the ones.
Yeah.
We had the last committee I was on anyway, that addressed that, it was members of all the entities that are involved in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And citizens, you know, the BLT, Boys and Girls Club, Aquatic District,
Mm-hmm.
City Council, City,
Lynn County.
Lynn County. It was a large.
It was a pretty concentrated effort, yeah. That was the most recent one.
Our district, I believe, had
Yeah.
somebody else.
That was,
Well, then we would have to undertax by some equivalent amount, because right now we're taking in money that's running the parks. And we would have to have some kind of agreement if it came to some kind of place where it's gonna be voted on. Isn't that true, John, that we'd have to say, we'll undertax by?
yeah, that would probably have been part of the deal that we would under levy, yes.
Yeah.
That
X amount.
portion.
Yeah.
It's a sensitive issue.
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
But, as Jason's pointed out, if that compression thing were to go away, huge difference.
Well, another thing you have to look at too is what's that going to encompass? Because you do have agencies like the Boys and Girls Club that are running youth athletics for profit, or not for profit, but for revenue. They support employees, they support part-time staff, full-time staff. And it was kind of the old struggle back in the day when I was involved in the club, where the middle school was saying, we're going to give up sports. The club takes it over, and the middle school came back. The school district came back 2 years later and said, well, we want it back. Now we have the money to do it again. Well, now we're going to lay off people because all this work we've done. So you want to make sure that we don't, or the group does not go in there and cut someone's throat to create this district and take away business. A long ways on the road. So.
And that was one of the reasons I brought it up, is because I want to discuss it, because I wasn't sure of all the ramifications.
It has potential to make us, a lot more robust. I mean, we're getting ready to enter into being a much more college-age environment where we could, where it really affects the health and well-being and attractiveness of our community. The more robust we can be in a recreational way.
And I have to tell you, all the recent municipal surveys I've seen of, what does the public really value? They kind of pretty much just assume the water's going to flow, the sewers are going to flush. What they almost always mention as a high priority is recreational facilities and recreational programs.
Especially the kind of people that we're going to be attracting.
Which is what we put on our thing last week in our session, was emphasis on livability.
Yep.
That brings to mind a kind of backhanded question that there's only so much money that will probably be generated for X number of things, police, so fire, etc. If people feel a need for a parks and rec district, is it because they feel they're being underserved in the parks and rec world? If so, what can we do better with the dollars that are already there to make them feel like they're getting a bigger bang for the buck?
I mean, it is kind of convoluted now, you got the pool, you got parks, and you got the Boys and Girls Club, and you got the schools, and so, I mean, I think you always have some of that, and you got BLT, you're always gonna have some of that segmentation, but if there was just, even if we had someone at the city that was a resource person for all of these people, that pooled all of the existing things together and said, we don't have a park and rec, but we have some sort of centralized specialist.
Well, the benefit too is that the Parks and Rec district boundary can go well beyond the city limits.
Oh, yeah.
And encompass the rural, which is, you've got twice the population of the rural than you do in the city.
Right.
We were talking about the high school district, high school boundaries being
We were.
the district.
Yeah.
Since then, it's even been talked about going,
Minor.
Well, I guess that brings the question that even right now, for every decision that this body makes, that directs a dollar, say to an extra police officer or something, is that much less going to parks that exist now. And so if there's a feeling that we're underserved there, how can we stretch those dollars to the best of our ability to serve the people that are the bill? But I mean, we could literally shift it all to something else and have nothing for the parks. I mean,
I can't remember, I don't remember if Floyd was on the council, and I know Bob was, I'm not sure, Wayne, if that was the time you were on or you were off, but along that lines, we had a volunteer recreation program, I think in '03 or '04. There was a young woman, I don't recall her name, I call her young woman, because she's a lot younger than I am, and that's not how they do, but who came to the city council and offered to run that program on a strictly, pay to play basis. We put in, 2, 3, 4, 5,000 as kind of startup seat money, but there was a big turnout. I mean, for volleyball, and I can't remember all the different. There was a lot of programs she had was dangling out there, and you pay different amounts of fees for different type of programs depending on what they were, and had great participation. I think pretty much broke even. But she was just burned out by it, after 9 months or a year, however long it ran. I can't do this anymore.
And I'm not suggesting we do that necessarily as much as tap into the things that are already existing, because that, you might say, okay, well, let's do adult softball, and then you step on someone's toes who's already, So somebody who contacts all of these great places and says, let's have a monthly meeting to talk about what you're doing, and it's a phone number, maybe it's a desk. I know it would be, it's not a great time to talk about increasing staffing, but it would be I'm just saying, to coordinate existing and create flyers and brochures and some sort of, it would be short of creating a district, or I'm just throwing that.
Well, there's the other side.
Recreation coordinators.
Yeah, so so you have a representative from the pool, Boys and Girls Club, but it's somebody who is a central person you can call. There's a brochure. These are all the recreational places we have in the city.
Well, the flip side. Oh, go ahead.
Because I was involved in that, this the last go around, the Aquatic District Board actually, yes, had convinced them it was the right way to go. Now, what happened was it became an internal struggle within 3 or 4 agencies about who was going to manage that district. That's a big hurdle.
That's when they dropped it and said, nah.
Well, there's another side to the equation too, other than just adding staffing or coordinating, is that it's been my impression for a while that Lynn County does amazing things with parks, and that they actually have I think, a pretty good revenue stream from some of their ventures, that maybe we should learn from them, because obviously if there's revenue, there are people participating and happy with that service and willing to pay for it, and then that can grow the program. If we're missing an opportunity, and they're right over there, maybe we have a lot to learn about ways to maximize the facilities that we have.
And their director was on that committee.
Yeah, I was. And maybe they help us as an entity.
Well, and I don't know, we used to have somebody, whose focus that was on management, whose focus parks and that kind of thing was, and now you've got Dan how many departments does he have?
Jason is on the parks.
Right now that would be Jason Williams.
Okay.
Yeah. But he's also managing streets and water and sewer.
Okay. All right.
You could volunteer.
Well, I think it's something that this council, I would like to see it re-energize the thought process by getting individuals together to brainstorm it, if nothing else. And because we are underserving a number of youth and adults in this community.
That's true.
The number of people that drive to Albany to play softball in the summertime, staggering.
And they're spending their money over there rather than here. But it's a huge task.
It is a big task. Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments on that? Did you want to put that down as a goal or any kind of action item?
I think if there's a consensus among this council, then we should at least look at it. I don't know how we orchestrate that, because there'll be some sensitive individuals in terms of their particular program.
Perhaps we should wait until after
I was thinking.
this bill goes through or doesn't go through, because if this bill fails in the House, then it's a moot point anyway.
Well, if we're talking about the district portion, but if we're talking about creating a committee that could reanalyze how effective our parks are, or reconfigurate interest, or I don't know what that would look like, but I think we ought to do that regardless of, because we do have a certain amount of funding. It would be nice if it was as effective as it could be.
Well, I think we've had some pretty positive feedback in the community over how the parks have been maintained in the last 2 or 3 years.
Okay, I think yeah, would do it.
We have a committee that parks and trees, I think, that, but, we as a council have not given them much of a budget.
I think where people feel underserved is in the services offered, programs, not the facilities themselves. I think if you ask any citizen, they'll say our parks are beautiful, they're well maintained, they look great, they're fun to go to. But when I get there,
There's not much going on.
right, there's not much going on. So I think it's the services available, the programs available that make the community feel underserved.
Right, and that's a way of expanding, it's kind of like getting at.
Well, it's kind of 2 different roads, so depending on what happens in the legislature, if it's a no, then we go down your road. If it's a yes, then we go down Wayne's road. And both roads will kind of go to the same place, but they have to dance around that ability to levy funds.
Quite candidly, Sheila Lake Park is a function of some partnerships that are in place to develop and circumvent that particular subject we're talking about. But it's about, a board of directors is trying to develop that with revenue generated by events at the park. It would take another 2 lifetimes to make it happen.
I think your point too, and I should have thought of that on the Parks and Tree Committee myself years ago. Maybe just giving the Parks and Tree Committee, throwing it in their lap and asking them to maybe talk about it, discuss it, and maybe see what their thoughts and ideas are on it. I mean, that's should be one of their jobs.
Well, a lot of their people are specifically interested in exactly what we're talking about.
Yes, yeah, and that's why they're there.
Right. They're passionate about it.
Okay. All right, I think we've, anything else from any council? John?
For me, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Jamie?
No, I have one thing.
Yes.
It's concerned me for some time, and I have talked to John about it. And I know we're coming up against a water rate increase in July. And staff has indicated that there possibly is some relief. I don't know what that amount might be, but we have a number of citizens that this is impacting. That's the dialogue and discussion about how we help those individuals.
This is the final increase, isn't it? The
Final
major.
Quite honestly, 150 people, but if we can somehow soften that blow, I hope that we can do that.
Well, maybe, like you were talking about, the, neighborhood meetings. Once we do decide,
What is
leading
that?
up to the final one, to say, so we have the discussion, we say, is there any way we can soften the blow? What are we doing? But then, once we make that decision, really making an effort to go out and say, this is coming, please come talk to us, we'll help you explain. it's not gonna be fun, but help, let us help you understand why we felt it was necessary. And
The July or August?
The council normally considers those in either May or June, and they're usually effective in July. Don't have to be, could be later than July, there's nothing magic about that, but
I would like to see,
the workshop session would be appropriate there,
And I know that Dan and engineering are, Jill is working at the cost phase of, we haven't really got the RFP
That's correct.
out there, but we know that it's up and coming, and we have an estimated, the estimation of whether it's 15 million or 17 million or whatever that is. And we're not gonna know the real number till we get with the home base. This is a contingent of discussion throughout the community, and I'd just like to see us have a work session and talk about how we might,
is it still necessary?
is it all necessary, or how much of it is necessary?
I'd like to have in one of our future meetings, a discussion of the policy, payment policy, time frame, and I've had a lot of complaints from people on that.
So do
I personally deal with it too because of the way my business works, so. I'd like to discuss it if we could have staff kind of
Let's do a
present
workshop.
what's been done in the past and, maybe we could do that for our next month's workshop.
We could do that, any opposed,
Okay.
I
I agree.
know we have a process in place at the window that they have some, but, during the hard hit times for those individuals, do we maybe lengthen that out for them? The key is that they don't ever get behind because catching up is difficult.
Very nice.
But maybe just, we do have a workshop and we kick that around and see how we can address a portion of the population's need.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, you always come up to that where you draw the line in the sand, the person that's just underneath that then has the right.
Sure.
And so it's not a win-win thing, that's for sure. But if we
But
can,
you do what you can.